Hey everyone, I'm Craig White. I'm the head of the School of Biological Sciences. I'd like to start by acknowledging the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land we're gathered today, pay our respects to their elders past and present. So biology is the study of life. We seek to understand the origin and diversity of living organisms, how they grow and reproduce, where they live, how they survive the environments they encounter in the places that they live, how they'll be affected by environmental change. In the School of Biological Sciences, we have particular areas of strength in evolutionary biology, conservation biology and ecology, and genetics and genomics. And what I'm going to do today is tell you a little bit about the school, a little bit about what it's like to be a biologist, and a bit about studying biology in the Bachelor of Science or as part of a double degree at Monash University. And it's really never been more clear how important biology is. So we come off the back a few years ago, the terrible bushfires that came through our part of the world. And we're in the middle now of the COVID-19 pandemic, which likely originated from zoonotic transfer of a virus from animals to humans. This is all set against the backdrop of climate change, environmental degradation, habitat fragmentation, and a range of processes that are impacting the living world around us. And as we've seen through the COVID-19 pandemic, that then in turn impacts upon us. So I'm going to tell you a bit about what it's like to study that, and I hope to, inspire you to take on a career in biology. So my journey began in Adelaide. So I grew up in South Australia. I studied a Bachelor of Science at Adelaide Uni in the late 90s, and then took on an honours degree the year after that. And it's really in the environment that you can see in the bottom left here where my passion for biology was ignited. So this is the Arid Recovery Project near Olympic Dam uranium mine in South Australia. And so while I was there with some other undergraduates, we investigated these scorpion burrows, and the scorpion there, Urodacus yashenkoi, constructs these massive burrows that go down beyond a meter into the sand dune, and they twist and contort. We wondered how much energy it would take to construct these burrows for an animal that's small, but not that small. They're about the size of the palm of your hand with a stinger, kind of that long there. They're big enough. And so it was through this experience that really made me think about studying the natural world as a professional biologist. I then went on to complete a PhD at the University of Adelaide. You can see some of the work I did here. So I studied wombats and other large animals. We undertook some trapping studies. We go out and capture wombats in the environment, and we wanted to understand how the seasonal variation in food availability influenced the animals and how the population was coping with what was happening at the time as a pretty prolonged drought. I was also interested in their burrow construction, and so you can see me there holding a wombat on one of these sampling trips. As part of my PhD, I was also fortunate to be able to study some beetles that pollinate philodendron inflorescences in French Guiana in South America. So this is Philodendron solomosense, and these little beetles spend their evenings within these inflorescences. When they're active, the beetles warm themselves up just like we do. They become warm, and you can see a thermal image here of the beetle warming itself up to maintain activity. And it turns out what the plants do is they provide a heater. So the inflorescence produces heat, and that warms up this little chamber that the insects hang out in overnight. And so basically, they're hosting a party for these insects. They're providing a nice warm environment. They're doing the catering. The insects, the beetles there, feed on the pollen, and they just generally party and have a great time. So this was a wonderful experience for me to be able to travel overseas, work with colleagues from France and Australia to study beetles pollinating heat-producing flowers in South America. After that, I moved on to the University of Birmingham in the UK, and there I studied cormorants. So you can see me on my little perch up there, my boss at the time, Pat Butler, looking on me, and a cormorant wondering why I'm talking to Pat rather than feeding him. What we did is we trained these birds to swim through that metal apparatus there you can see in the photo. And we did this because we wanted to understand how well they could see underwater. It's really difficult to get cormorants to read letters off of an eye chart. And so we taught them to distinguish things underwater so that we could understand how well they see underwater. And we wanted to do that because at the time there was a big conflict between fishers and cormorants because the cormorants were eating stocked dams, eating the fish from stocked dams. So we were trying to design ways that we could protect the fish from the birds. And just here we've got an example of what that sort of study looks like. The bird comes through, swims along this tunnel, makes a visual discrimination, and then swims away. So in this case, the bird chose the wrong side. It couldn't see the target that it was looking for, and so it didn't get a fish. After spending 3 years in the UK, I moved to Queensland, where I was an academic at the University of Queensland for 8 years. One of the great experiences of my life during this period was the opportunity to travel to the Steve Irwin Wildlife Reserve in far north Queensland. The Irwin family are often in the press. An amazing achievement for that was the protection of this area of pristine wilderness. It's really an extraordinary place. And so some of the animals we encountered there, you can see on the bottom left, a couple of lizards and another scorpion, and a swamp that we got to visit. The reason we were up there is because we wanted to understand how animals that live in these really hot places would cope with increasing temperatures due to global climate change. Just as an example of how hot it was, this is Julian Beeman, one of my students, after a bit of time in the field looking for lizards. It was a warm place to work. After that, I came to Monash. This is some of the work that we've done at Monash, a bit of time lapse of me over there. You can tell it was pre-pandemic because I've got short hair. During the pandemic, I've looked more like I do now. What we were studying here is the influence of different diets on the energy expenditure of animals. So as carbon dioxide accumulates in the atmosphere, it's going to cause plants to have a increased concentration of carbohydrate and a decreased concentration of protein. And we wanted to know what this change in the protein to carbohydrate ratio of the plants that animals consume, we wanted to know what the effect of this was on their physiology. And of course, this is the other thing that I do now that I'm at Monash University. This is me teaching a group of first years in the Learning and Teaching building. And if you want to know what I'm doing with my head in a bucket, I suggest you enroll in first year biology. So I'm one type of biologist. I'm a physiologist, interested in how animals work. There are many different ways that a degree in biology can open up career opportunities for you. So I've listed a range of them here. So they span environmental conservation, government, healthcare, positions in education and research and business. And there are a number of sectors that have been identified as key areas for growth where biologists will be required, including food and agriculture, healthcare and pharmaceuticals, and manufacturing. So these are sort of the specific, or a little bit of the information about the types of roles that people in biology go on to take. And an example that I can give you is another former student in my lab. She studied the influence of temperature on lizards as part of a Bachelor of Science with honours. She then moved into horticulture exports with the Australian Government Department of Agriculture and Water, moved on to a position as a multilateral policy officer in the Australian Permanent Mission to the UN in Vienna, and has just recently moved from Vienna to New York as an advisor in the Australian Mission to the United Nations in New York. So her study in biology opened up roles in biosecurity and horticulture, and then her experience in those roles opened up sort of experts, other roles in the Australian government. So there's really quite a broad range of different things that biologists go on and do, from sort of medical counselling through to conservation, government research, university research, consultancy, strategic analysis, range of different skills that this career or this degree will prepare you for. That can be further broadened by combining a Bachelor of Science with other degrees from arts, biomedical science, commerce, computer science, education, engineering, global studies, information technology, law, and music. So science can be combined with a range of different other degrees. But I'll now just talk a little bit more in more detail about the Bachelor of Science. So how does the Bachelor of Science work? So the Bachelor of Science is generally undertaken as a 3-year full-time degree. And it comprises a mix of lectures, tutorials, workshops, and practicals. And the picture I've got up here is the teaching space in the Jock Marshall Reserve, where we teach some of our undergraduate units and some of our master's units. Practicals are an essential component of this. So our practical work combines a mixture of lab experiments, field trips to exciting places to learn about different sorts of habitats, and statistical analyses of the data that biologists typically work with. We take a problem-based and inquiry-based approach to this, and we do a number of small research projects, because one of the great things that you get from a Bachelor of Science is the ability to work with others towards a goal, to use the scientific process to solve problems. And what we do as scientists is we push the boundaries of human knowledge forward. And so we start giving you experience in that, increasing through the degree. There are opportunities to go to all sorts of interesting places. So we've got some of our lab work shown up there on the top left. We've got some water sampling taking place at the Jock Marshall Reserve. And we also have field trips that go to Heron Island in Queensland and to Borneo. We're not going to Borneo at the moment because of border closures, but we're going to North Queensland instead. So we have trips that take in the tropics. We have marine trips that take in Victorian marine environment, as well as the Victorian terrestrial environment. So depending on the sorts of biology that you favour, there are opportunities to take in a range of different experiences through the course of the degree. We build through these 3 years from the first year, which has a broad exposure to a range of topics. So you'll typically take biology with a range of other first year units. Could be physics, chemistry, earth, atmosphere, and environment's a good complement. In year 2, we begin to specialise. So narrow down your field of focus, and then that continues into year 3. So you build breadth initially, exposure to a wide range of things, and then you narrow down to an area of expertise over the 3 years of the degree. So in first year, we generally take 2 or 3 units of biology. So we have Blueprints for Life and Life on Earth, and Life in the Environment are our 3 largest first year units. So the first year bits that I teach living energy in Blueprints for Life, and I teach animal solutions to life, or parts of it, in Life on Earth. So if you do these units, you'll see me again. We also have a unit called Humans, Evolution and Modern Society, which is generally for non-biologists, which brings biological concepts to people who aren't planning to continue in biology. We cover a range of topics, and I teach nutrition at the end of that. There's a series of generic skills that you obtain and stretch and exercise throughout the course of your degree. So you'll learn the scientific method, which is key to how we go about the business of being a scientist, problem solving skills, information management and evaluation, the use of laboratory equipment, data analysis and presentation, and peer group and individual learning. And these are all important skills that you'll carry forward into any of the careers that you might go on with. And as we go through the years, we get into second year and we have a range of intermediate level units. This is where you start to narrow down your major area of interest. So you might focus on physiology, or molecular biology, or biochemistry in combination with a few other things. So in my degree, I focused on zoology and physiology, and now I study the physiology of animals, and I teach the physiology of animals. And then in third year, the range of options gets broader and broader. And so you can specialize further, take a range of different expert level courses. So you learn bioinformatics, you have courses on, or units, sorry, on the biology of Australian vegetation or Australian vertebrates, marine biology, a range of different things as you build your expertise through those 3 years. And as I said, a range of different transferable and employability skills. Some of the most important here are skills like project management, where you're running research projects for a period of time. You can then use that experience to demonstrate to an employer that you're capable of delivering a project at a particular timeline with a successful outcome. Learn to work independently, you'll learn to work in teams and solve increasingly complex problems as you move through the degree. So that's kind of the backdrop of the Bachelor of Science and how it works, or at least how the biological components of the Bachelor of Science work. I'll talk now a little bit about the School of Biological Sciences. So, we welcome the students who study with us into our community. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what we do as a School of Biological Sciences. So we teach the units that you'll be studying, and we also undertake research and in a range of different areas. So we have 3 different major themes within the school: ecology and conservation, evolution in a changing world, and genetics, genomics, and health. I thought I'd just highlight the sorts of things that we do to give you an idea about the expertise and the impact of the work that the people in biological sciences are doing, and the skills that they'll then impart to you as students studying biology as part of the Bachelor of Science at Monash. So a very recent piece of research that was conducted within our ecology and conservation theme involved 3 researchers from our school: Jane Melville, David Chappell, and Reed Tingley. And the work here was trying to understand how we can go about documenting, working out where the biodiversity in Australia is, and then working out, as a consequence of understanding where that biodiversity is, where we need to focus our efforts to try and document it and thereby conserve it. So they were trying to understand how best to use limited resources to work out what species are in Australia, where those species are, and what we might need to know in order to go about conserving them. In our evolution in a changing world theme, a very recent piece of research undertaken by Belinda van Harwaarden and Carla Scrow documented that the impact of climate change on animals is probably not going to be felt via the temperatures that they can tolerate, but it might be felt through the temperatures at which males remain fertile. So this work was conducted with vinegar flies, and they found that animals become infertile at much lower temperatures than they can survive. And in some cases, they become infertile at temperatures that are very close to the temperatures they already live at. So small increases in temperature might have quite negative consequences for them. And then work in our genetics, genomics, and health theme, undertaken by Sridevi Suresh Kumar and Samesh Kumar Balasubramanian, identified a triplet repeat expansion genetic defect in Arabidopsis, which is a small plant, that allows them to better understand the mechanism by which some genetic diseases in humans act. So this plant, Arabidopsis, can be studied in order to help us understand the genetics of this disease better, and therefore develop treatments for the disease ultimately in humans. And with that, I'd like to invite you to visit our facilities using the campus discovery tours. And I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope to see you in first year. I look forward to seeing you in the beautiful learning and teaching building, and you can work out why I'm sticking my face in a big bucket of water. And have a great day. Thanks very much.